person's been arrested, now charged. Let the justice process take its place. We understand the fear and the anger, and they said we understand peaceful protest, but setting things on fire isn't peaceful protest. It impacts on the people, part of the community. We saw the community come out last night, actually saved a man's life. Members of the same community acting very heroically. They're hoping that this actually does pass peacefully. People come out, express their anger and fear, rightly, peacefully, but then, as we see now, just hopefully, just walking home, walking around the streets without destroying stuff, setting stuff on fire and confronting the police. The police have a job to do. They're doing that. They've actually arrested him. Really quick investigation, charged him already. That investigation continues. They need time to do that and look into his background.
There is a large number of people there. We can see them moving through the streets in Belfast. These are live pictures from our helicopter. The hope is that these protests will be peaceful. We have seen a vehicle there set on fire. But in terms of police resource, because, of course, that may well be a bit of a frustration for the police service in terms of their, you know, in the middle of the events of what has been unfolding over the last 24 hours, and now this is being dealt with. What kind of resource would this take?
My understanding is they probably deployed most of their public order resources. They work slightly differently in PSNI. They work normally in the armoured Land Rovers, as we've seen, so their public order teams will be in those. They can come out with their protective equipment, horses, dogs, as we've seen before with other protests, serious disorder in Belfast, baton rounds as well, water cannon, etc. So I would imagine they've got all the tactical options available to them, but the police commanders will be hoping they use hardly any, if any, of those. It's literally just a peaceful protest, walking around the streets, showing their anger and resentment, not setting fire to things, not smashing everything up. And they won't need to deploy all those resources, but all the tactical responses will be available. They are highly experienced in dealing with serious disorder in Belfast. They're probably the most experienced police officers in the UK in dealing with serious disorder. I was fortunate enough to work for one of my previous commanders who ended up as the Chief Constable of Northern Ireland, Sir Hugh Ward, and he used to say to us, I haven't actually seen serious disorder until you've actually policed Belfast and seen what happens there. So, really experienced police force, with really experienced public order commanders, all the tactical options available to them, but they'll be hoping this passes very, very peacefully without too much, if any, disorder at all.
Yeah, an increased police presence there in the centre of Belfast. Just to update you on the development this evening, a 30-year-old man arrested in connection with that stabbing attack in Belfast last night has this evening been charged with attempted murder and will appear in court in the city tomorrow. That is coming from the Police Service of Northern Ireland tonight. They've also asked for clips of the incident because the attack was filmed to not play on any platforms. Of course, Graham, that is another concern, that the footage of that incident, which should have just been shared with police, has been shared on social media. Graham, we'll speak in just a moment. We've got Sky's Dan Whitehead, who is in Belfast for us tonight. Dan, what's going on where you are?
Yeah, we're in the east of the city on Lower Newtonards Road. Let me just move out because we can see that in the distance a bus has been set on fire here. This was the shots that we've been seeing from the helicopter over the last half an hour or so, where sort of 200 or 300 people have been gathering. It rained and the numbers thinned out, and then people moved further down the road. You can hear some of those explosions in the distance there. We've heard a few, what we suspect to be the sort of petrol tanks of the bus and potentially some surrounding vehicles exploding. We think this fire started from a bin, potentially, that was close to the bus, but we're not sure on that. But you can see there that we think a double-decker bus, but certainly a large bus, completely engulfed in flames, and a lot of the crowds have moved down the road. You know, we're keeping a distance here. It is a sensitive situation, and people are not too happy with photos and pictures being taken, but we're bringing these pictures because they are, of course, significant, and this comes just an hour or so, as you say, after the 30-year-old man of Sudanese descent has been charged with attempted murder and other offences, and he will appear in court here in Belfast tomorrow. But you can see here those pictures of the bus on fire in the distance, that smoke billowing into the sky here to the east of the city. We are around a mile and a half from the incident itself where the attack took place last night. That attack described as a brutal attack horrifying, of course, described by the Prime Minister as horrific and sickening. And less than 24 hours on the streets of Belfast, we now have a bus on fire. Before this took place, an hour or so, it was largely peaceful. But what we're hearing is that there are pockets or so of these several hundred people gathering in different parts of the city. And one of the police officers told me that he said it's all over the city in terms of pockets of where people are gathering. Of course, the authorities and the police have been calling for calm tonight. That is what they want. Clearly, at the moment, that is not the picture here in the east of the city. And it really remains about monitoring those flashpoints about where this could potentially happen. And clearly this is one of them at the moment. You know, the weather has held people away. It was quite heavy torrential rain about 20 minutes ago, and that's when we saw sort of crowds disperse. You only need one flashpoint like this, of course, for things to become more significant. So let me just step out the way again. Interestingly, on the
Well, we've just lost our connection to Dan Whitehead, who is on the streets of Belfast for us tonight. We'll go back to Dan shortly, but let's speak now to Nuala McAllister, a member of the Legislative Assembly for Belfast North. Nuala McAllister, you'll be watching these scenes closely on Sky News, and from where you are, what are your thoughts as you see this unfold this evening?
Well, first and foremost, our thoughts continue to be with the victim and his family, and hope he pulls through. At the minute, we are still in the Northern Ireland Assembly. Our Parliament is still sitting as we speak, and this issue has been raised, of course, on the floor of the Assembly today. But our calls, our cross-party calls for appeal for calm, they have not been listened to, and we have seen it, and the anger on the streets and what you're seeing in front of us. The buses have been burned, and this isn't something that is unique or new to Northern Ireland. Unfortunately, this is something that we have seen over the years because of different incidences, perhaps not ones linked to those today, but it's very distressing that this incident has made way for people to exploit the issue, gather on the streets. And of course, there is a right to peaceful process, but there is no right to any protest like this. This is not a legitimate concern by burning buses and destroying your own community. This does nothing to further anyone's cause.
As you say, legitimate protest, of course, is allowed, and the big question is it justified at this time? It's less than 24 hours on from that attack, and there is a man in hospital with potentially life-changing injuries. We await for updates on him, and it's members of the community who came to his rescue last night.
Yeah.
And, you know, we now have protesters on the streets where he was attacked, where that community came together to rescue him, and these are the scenes. You know, these are hard to justify. As you said, protest is legitimate.
They can't
but
be.
Is there a fear that this will be hijacked by those with alternative agendas, not not the man at the centre of this, the man that's been attacked?
It's already been hijacked, as you can see in the screen in front of you, whenever we have buses set on fire, whenever we have public services that are ruined, that are supposed to actually serve the community who are raising issues with what happened last night. What I will say is just last week in Northern Ireland, we had the sentencing of a killer who absolutely brutally murdered a young woman here in Northern Ireland with a knife, stabbed dozens of times, but yet we didn't see a call for protest on the streets like this. So there is no doubt that this issue has been hijacked by people who do want to further their own agenda. And of course, people do have a right to protest, but they have no right to do this at all.
Nuala McAllister, what would you say to those who are hijacking this tragic event tonight?
I would say to them that they need to look at what their actions are actually doing to their own communities. They're not only frightening people who are from here, but also people who have come to live and work here, who serve our very NHS and health service, to the very people in our communities who need help, from health workers that have been sent home tonight. They haven't been able to access their homes, and serve the people that these so-called protesters are saying that they're to protect. That's not what this is about, and they should go home. And if they are protesting lawfully and peacefully, they have every right to do that. But if they are not furthering anyone's agenda, and they're not doing right by anyone's cause.
Nuala McAllister, large pockets are gathering in various points in Belfast. Our helicopter here showing live scenes of just one part of the city, but we have seen several pockets of large groups. And the fear is that, you know, it's light at the moment, there's a break in the rain, but it will soon be dark. Are you fearful of what will happen under the anonymity of darkness in Belfast tonight?
One thing that does have to be highlighted is just last year and the year before there was violence and disorder on the streets of Belfast following an incident that had happened in which people were later released and charges were withdrawn. And there was disorder on the streets, but not only on the streets, people were driven from their homes. There were mobs that surrounded people's homes simply because of what they look like from ethnic minority backgrounds and communities. And that's not acceptable. And I have very real concerns, as does the police service, as do many political representatives, that this will only get worse as the evening goes on. Now, the police do have a presence right across Belfast, but there is no doubt that this is stretching police resources. And I do believe that that is something that those organisers behind this have attempted to do and want to do as well. And it's very important that the police do have the support of political representatives to try and calm the rhetoric that we see spreading on social media. And so this cannot continue to build up on our streets.
And important for those to know that if this does escalate this evening, they will face the full force of the law.
Absolutely, as they should. As should the attacker last night in this instance. No matter where he is from, who he is, he should face the full weight of the law. And that is clear both from the police service and from political representatives. But if you take that and use that as an excuse to protest and carry out criminal behaviour yourself, then you too will also face the full weight of the law, as you should. And the police may not arrest you this evening, but they can make multiple arrests in the days and weeks ahead. And that is what happened last year and the year before when we saw this disorder on the streets of Northern Ireland.
As we said, the breaking news this evening is that a 30-year-old man arrested in connection with a stabbing attack last night in the city has been charged with attempted murder and will appear in court in the city tomorrow. This investigation has been swift. Charges have been brought, and police have also said to stop running any footage of what was filmed last night by members of the public, perhaps well-meaning in terms of that footage could be vital to the police in this investigation. But, as is often the case, it ends up on social media and that is still circulating. What would you say to anyone who is thinking of sharing that footage or indeed has posted it already?
I think it really has to be highlighted and pointed out that where is the dignity for that victim? Where's the dignity for his family in sharing that video? We have often spoken about this in the media, in parliaments across the UK, that we need to ensure that there is dignity and the victims are at the heart of this. And I would ask people to remember that whenever they do share this video. Nobody needs to see it. It is gruesome. It is horrific. That attack was barbaric, but the police need the space to actually do their work and carry out their investigation. We need to make sure we do nothing and nobody unintentionally does anything to actually make these proceedings even harder for the police. But most importantly as well, from my perspective, I think, is the dignity of that victim, because why should that be played out time and again? And one thing that I highlighted earlier, and I said this morning in the Assembly chamber, is that what makes this even more horrifying is the fact that it was caught on camera. When we had the death of the murder of Natalie McNally, who was stabbed so many times in a brutal and frenzied attack by her partner, and this made headlines right across the UK, that happened behind closed doors and there wasn't the same outrage. But the fact that this has happened and been caught on camera, and also the fact that the attacker is from an ethnic minority background and also is an asylum seeker who was granted refugee status, is now being used by people who have whipped up tensions, and as you can see on your screen, has resulted in this evening. And my concern and the concern of many people here is, where do we go from here?
Yeah, that's a really important question, isn't it? Because the scenes that we're seeing, this cycle of a tragic incident like what happened in the city to that man last night, the public outcry, understandably, but as you said, because it widely circulates on social media, is jumped on by people with different agendas. I mean, there are legitimate concerns in the UK about immigration. There is a right to peaceful protest. But how do we break this cycle, Nuala McAllister, and I ask you as, in your position in government as a member of the Legislative Assembly for Belfast North, how do you break this cycle of it being hijacked? And, certain people will say, look, we almost knew what we would be witnessing tonight following what unfolded on the streets last night.
And I agree, absolutely. We did see this coming once we heard the news of what happened last night. But what I would say is it's really tough in this instant, in the immediate hours that follow, to not allow it to be hijacked, because we cannot control what is spread in social media. We cannot control how quickly protests are organised and how quickly people can get out into the street now. That is really, really hard. That is a question that we have asked ourselves today. And one of those things that we can do is we can show political leadership. I mean, we can ensure the communities and their representatives actually speak out and say that enough is enough. This is not acceptable. It's not acceptable to come out and burn down your own community, to burn out people who are not from here. It's not. We had an attack on Sunday in which a member of the Indian community had their shop burnt out because they were not from here. This isn't something that is unique and new just to Northern Ireland, but it's something that we all need to grapple with. That in the immediate aftermath of an incident, an event like this, is not the time for you to be saying we have legitimate concerns, therefore we have an excuse and justification to come out and protest like this. And there is a time and a place to have those conversations, and we should be doing it in the likes of our Parliament, right here in Northern Ireland Assembly or in the UK Parliament. We should be having those conversations, but they also need to be taken place and acted upon in good faith. And more often than not, they are not, and they are hijacked by people who have bad intentions.
Yeah, and Nuala, just, those intentions can have unintended consequences in terms there is a due process. A man has been charged with attempted murder. There will be, a criminal justice process to follow, and the damage that can be done by social media protests like this. At the end of the day, this is an individual who doesn't represent a country, doesn't represent a race. This is an individual person charged with attempted murder. And, what has been following over the last 24 hours, may well damage that process.
Absolutely, and that's something that has been spoken about many times. The criminal justice process needs to be allowed to continue without interference, and that's why the police have been doing the best that they can to try and control the situation on the ground, gather as much evidence as they can, make sure that the man was charged in good time, and also ensure that he can appear in court. I don't doubt that that will be able to continue, but we must ensure that nobody can actually interfere with that. This isn't over tonight. This isn't the last of it. I doubt we as political representatives have a role to play in terms of engaging with people on the ground and ensuring that tensions can be calmed. But also there will be a lot of people here in Northern Ireland who are living in fear, who wake up every single day and come to serve the public in the roles that they carry out, and they will be worried, and rightly so. They will be concerned about their safety, and we need to think about them too.
Yeah. Nuala McAllister, Alliance Party politician, a member of the Legislative Assembly for Belfast North. Thank you so much for your time this evening. Distressing scenes in your city tonight. Our police commentator, Graham Whettone, is watching the helicopter shot we have on your screen right now. Just talk to me what's happening here, Graham.
Police Service Northern Ireland deploy slightly differently to the mainland. So we tend to deploy in police support carriers. So there's normally like 3 carriers for a support unit. They deploy slightly differently in PSNI. I would imagine that's 1 police support unit across the 6 armoured Land Rovers. So the officers will be at the back. They use their vehicles a lot more proactively than we do on the mainland. They use them almost like a moving cordon, which we're seeing on the screen now. At least a couple of Land Rovers had the rear door open with the shields ready. So the officers will have their protective shields ready to deploy on foot if need be. But they're using the vehicles almost like a moving cordon to keep distance in the crowd and then moving them slowly back up towards the main junction. So it's almost like a tiered approach, but the officers are behind the armoured Land Rovers and they use their vehicles very effectively in Northern Ireland. They're well versed in it. So moving them back from a built-up area. Yeah. Look, you can see there's traffic there. There is, yeah, here at the junction. And the traffic are having to stop at that junction for the protesters, the police just moving them back. And Graham, I was just talking there with Nuala McAllister about the fact that it's daylight there. It's still early evening, we're on summertime hours, but what are your thoughts about when darkness falls under the cover of darkness, what tends to happen in these situations? You quite often see when darkness falls, it lends an air of almost like anonymity to people in protests. You can't see them as clearly. the clothing, visible distinctive marks aren't quite as clear or visible. There will be evidence gathering teams working. The vehicles will have, or some of the vehicles will have camera equipment on them. So again, they'll be recording the people at the moment. And afterwards, depends what happens later, they can then build a timeline of where people have been seen and if they're seen later on. So they will be gathering evidence, even now at this early stage, of everybody involved in the protest. If it transpires later on in the hours of darkness that someone does commit offences, on occasions you can match that up, depending on who it is, where they are, etc. So they will try and track them during the evening.
Yeah,
if it
how big is the surveillance operation, as well as the sort of, you know, the practical element of this? As you said, you know, they're using vehicles to move the crowd. Yeah. You've got the police officers there with shields. What's the surveillance operation like? Because that will be a key part in the days to come, should essentially it all kick off tonight.
It's primarily all over. There'll be uniformed officers with cameras, evidence gathering teams, as we have on the mainland as well, but they're deployed alongside the police support units, as we can see on the screen. So there'll probably be an evidence gathering team with them, recording and filming everything that's going on as well. They'll have access to any street cameras, again, any fixed CCTV cameras of buildings they go past. So it can all be documented as they go. You can see the officers, again, just using the vehicles as a barrier between them and the crowd, and they're using the vehicles to distance the crowd, with the officers at the back supporting them, but backed up by the vehicles. And they will condense, as we're seeing, down to 3 now. They're really well rehearsed in this. So they come down to narrow roads, they come down to 3 vehicles, the other 3 will then just drop in behind. Officers still stay behind the vehicle, and they're using the vehicles like a moving cordon. And I would expect there'd be some sort of plan, objective, to move them somewhere else away from that main junction. As we're seeing now, traffic and normality can then return to that part of Belfast while they're moving that crowd away somewhere else.
Well, Nuala McAllister, Northern Ireland MLA, who we were speaking to just a few moments ago, you know, has urged people to go home, quite simply, was her message, go home. The knife attack in Belfast has drawn reaction from across Westminster today. Nigel Farage saying that people are right to be angry after the Northern Ireland Secretary warned against disorder on the streets.
Well, this was an horrific and brutal attack on an individual in North Belfast. And first of all our thoughts are with the victim, who is seriously injured in hospital, and with his family.
The government always appeal for calm. Let's be calm. Don't cause a fuss. Don't frighten the horses, unless, of course, it's George Floyd, somewhere in the Midwest of America, and then then it's fine to be angry.
Well, let's bring in our chief political correspondent, John Craig, who is in Westminster. And John, as we always say when incidents like this begin to unfold, words matter, particularly from political leaders.
Well, what's happened today is that this incident has reopened the debate yet again about immigration policy. Now, Mr Farage, talking about immigration policy rather than about this case specifically, criticised what's called the leave to remain, the right to remain. He said that that was dished out like Smarties. Now, it's interesting, actually, that whilst Mr Farage is critical of government's policy, it was actually 2 of his senior recruits from the Tories, Suella Braverman and Robert Jenrick, who were, first of all, Home Secretary in her case, and secondly, Immigration Minister in the case of Mr Jenrick. Now, Mr Jenrick was talking about people coming from Sudan in a Commons debate back in November 2023. He talked about individuals having to make a journey to leave Sudan. Unlikely they'll fly directly from Sudan. He said most of the cases he was aware of as an immigration minister, people who've made the journey to Cairo or to Jeddah or other neighbouring countries. So that was Mr Jenrick speaking generally back then. Now, what happened today was that at lunchtime was an urgent question from the leader of the Democratic Unionist Party, Gavin Robinson. He actually, making a general point about immigration rules, said that uncontrolled immigration has to end. and he was criticising the government for its record on immigration. Uncontrolled immigration has to end, he said. The one MP used the phrase alien culture. That was Jim Allister, a right-wing, shall we say, hardline unionist. Hilary Benn, the Northern Ireland Secretary, answering the questions, was pretty cross about his use of that term. But there were all sorts of questions about this case to which the Northern Ireland Secretary wasn't really able to answer, left MPs very frustrated. Now, it was not until 20 to 5 this afternoon when, after Mr Benn had deflected questions, said, oh, I can't say anything about this person, that's to do with the Home Office and so on. 20 to 5, we had this statement about the... he talked to what the Home Office called the suspect's immigration status. We can confirm the individual is a Sudanese national with leave to remain in the UK until 2028. He entered the UK in 2023, was granted refugee status the same year. He claims to have entered the UK via the Common Travel Area. Now, the Common Travel Area, that's a long-standing arrangement between the UK, Guernsey, Jersey, Isle of Man, and it basically allows British and Irish citizens to move around all those countries and islands easily, enjoy rights, privilege, right to work, study, vote, and so on. But the government's opponents are very much on the attack over immigration policy. Mr Benn hit back at his critics in the Commons by saying, well, actually, immigration numbers are down. But, of course, this is something that may well come up at Prime Minister's questions tomorrow. The Prime Minister will no doubt be asked about it. But as we have seen in the last week or so, in the case of Henry Novak, we've seen the Prime Minister and Kemi Badenoch not exactly on the same page, but much more measured tone from Kemi Badenoch and the Conservatives than we've seen from the likes of Nigel Farage and Rupert Lowe, who's perhaps been the most extreme on this today, the most critical. So the immigration debate is wide open again. Leave to remain policy is under question. And, of course, the government's opponents are criticising the fact that many people can come from countries like Sudan and others, Somalia and so on. And no doubt there will be calls from certain opposition parties to tighten the law. The government insists, of course, it's brought the numbers down, and it's pointed out, of course, that some of the critics of government policy in reform, Suella Braverman and Robert Jenrick, were immigration ministers at the time in 2023. In fact, Chris Philp also, a few years before that, was a junior immigration minister. So I think we can probably expect to hear government ministers say, well, you know, some of you who criticised the government, you were in government a few years ago.
John, thank you. John Craig with the latest there from Westminster. Well, these are live pictures from Belfast tonight. A number of protesters taking to the streets, pockets of them at various points throughout the city tonight. The latest development is that a man has been charged, a Sudanese national has been charged with attempted murder after that knife attack in the city last night. He's been charged with attempted murder, possession of an article with a blade or point in a public place, and making threats to kill. He is a man aged 30. He is due to appear at Belfast Magistrates Court tomorrow. And as is protocol in Northern Ireland, the authorities do not release the name of accused persons before they appear in court. Let's bring in Sky's Dan Whitehead, who is in Belfast for us tonight. Dan, talk to us about what's going on where you are.
Yeah, we're on Lower Newtonards Road, sort of in the east of the city. It's about 1.5 miles away from where that attack took place less than 24 hours ago. You can see behind me, we've been seeing those pictures from the helicopter in the last hour or so. That long bus, it's sort of like a double bendy bus, which has been set alight after a fire next to it was set on fire. You can see that the fire engines are on location there. They had to drive this way through the crowds and are attempting to get that fire under control. We keep hearing a series of explosions from that fire We're not sure if things are being thrown in at the same time or whether it's just the engine and the petrol setting alight, but clearly this is just one of the flash points which we're seeing across Belfast at the moment. There are other areas where we are hearing reports of people throwing objects at police vans tonight, riot vans blocking protesters from getting into certain areas. The crowds aren't significant at the moment, I must admit. You know, this is probably the busiest protest at the moment in the city, where at its height I would say there were sort of around 300 or so people. It's a mix really of locals here who are concerned, business owners. We've seen posters on some of the businesses on this road here saying that they were closing early because of concerns about the protests, and that may well have been justified looking at what is happening on this road here tonight, as well as those locals who've gathered down here to come and take a look. You know, there are plenty of people who are dressed in black. They are wearing balaclavas. They are covering their face. They clearly don't want to be identified. But as Graham, our policing expert, was mentioning there, you know, the police are on the scene and they will be gathering evidence, especially that flashpoint of the fire, which you can see is still raging. And this is a difficult situation for the fire service down there because this is contained between two sides of the street, and right near the bus down there it is particularly busy. So it is dangerous. There are explosions continuing, which we periodically hear, and they will be trying their best to get that fire under control while they can. In terms of the scene a bit further up where we are, at the moment people are just milling around, they are watching. We've had a few people who are not wanting us to cover and report on this. Obviously it is significant given that this is less than 24 hours after that attack. We're going to pass back to you now, as some of those people who aren't happy are coming over to us. We'll pass you back to the studio.
Yeah, Dan, you stay safe. We'll take over from here. Live pictures from Belfast tonight. Just the helicopter pictures there over that fire that is blazing in the city centre. Just to say that a man tonight has been charged with attempted murder. He is a man in his 30s, a Sudanese national. He lived close to where the attack took place in Belfast last night, attacking a man in his 40s who sustained significant injuries, we understand, to his eyes and serious wounds to his back and face. He remains in a serious condition in hospital tonight. The man accused of attempted murder is due to appear at Belfast Magistrates Court tomorrow. Stay with us here on Sky News. We'll bring you more after this short break.
Liberation Day.
By popular demand, here we are.
Donald Trump. It is quite the story. Wherever it goes, on Trump 100, we go with it.
Tell us who you're looking for.
Unbelievable we've come to this.
Are you overstating the reach and significance of this deal?
Not like you said it.
From the UK.
Why don't you go back to your country where you have a major migrant problem?
It was 10 feet from him, and all of a sudden the shots rang out.
People impacted.
I'll tell you on another day on the podcast what that was all about.
Join us wherever you get your podcast.
This is how you travel when the mafia wants to kill you.
He's almost given up his own freedom, but that's the price he's willing to pay.
Here, they don't just arrest Ndrangheta mafia members, they also live among them.
Time after time, I've seen the devastating impact of extreme weather and climate change.
We don't have much snow at the moment.
They've had a warm spring and exceptionally hot summer, and that means they're expecting to lose more than 3 times the amount of ice than they usually do.
Flames are still forcing people from their homes and leaving many questioning their futures.
Here was my life. We have nothing. I can't say anything, it's so sad.
This disaster is testing the resolve of everyone on this island.
The only way out now is by boat.
Everything you see is devastated, and the misery being felt by people living here is repeated in towns and villages across Central Europe. Sky News, get the full story first.
Turkey is burying its dead. The loss is profound.
Whole families died in this collapse, generations wiped out.
The violence has penetrated the heart of the city rather than being contained to the estates around the edge, and that speaks to the level of anger being felt here. In Sweden, police have seized a lethal stash. This is just a small sample of the deadly arsenal taken off the streets.
This is an example of an advert, really. Anyone of any age could say, I'll do that for £1 million, and then have to go and shoot someone.
Yes.
I'm Siobhan Robbins, Sky's Europe correspondent based here in Berlin.
You're watching Sky News. These are the scenes live from the city of Belfast tonight. A development after last night's stabbing in the city. A man has been charged with attempted murder. The 30-year-old suspect is Sudanese and is due to appear before magistrates tomorrow. The victim, a man in his 40s, remains in hospital tonight with serious eye, face and back injuries. Throughout the course of today, police and political leaders in Northern Ireland have called for calm tonight. But there are pockets of protesters throughout the city, as our helicopter has been showing you throughout the course of our programme tonight. And as you can see, pockets of smoke as well. A number of vehicles on fire. We've got a live blog up and running at skynews.com with a number of still images to show you what has been unfolding tonight. Buses, cars, bins on fire and large groups of people roaming the city. Our police commentator Graham Whettone has been following events with me this evening. And Graham, just give people a summary, if they're just joining us, of what we've seen unfold so far this evening.
We've seen some vehicles set on fire, a bus set on fire near a residential block of flats. Police using some of their vehicles, their armoured Land Rovers, very effectively. It's like a moving cordon, moving protesters through a really busy junction. I'm grateful to one of my colleagues who's messaged me saying that was the M2. To actually move them across the main junction and distance them. But as we're seeing now, and it was always going to be a small section who would come out and use this awful incident just to show... engaged in disorder and violence. And we're seeing that in small pockets, and it's small pockets across the city at the moment, but it is still daylight. Darkness can bring a different element or aspect to any public order situation. So wait and see how the evening transpires. But at the moment, there's small fires in different areas. Police are dealing with it, as are the fire service, and the fire service normally deploy once the police have said an area is safe for them to deploy into.
The police effectively have got two jobs this evening. To contain and ensure calm and peaceful protest, but also to protect the community. In recent years, Northern Ireland has experienced two waves of racially motivated riots. The Belfast riots of 2024 and those in Ballymena last year. Talk to me about how the service will divide its resources tonight in the city.
The public order commanders will be watching all the images from all news outlets and their own CCTV and getting information from their units on the ground, the evidence gathering teams, etc. They will know the types of areas where they are likely to have problems, because they've probably had them there before. So there'll be historic information and intelligence they will react to. There'll be information that's coming from the community, even through the night, and they'll react to those. So calls coming in, they can still respond to those types of calls. So they will know roughly the areas they are likely to have some sort of issue and disorder. They'll focus... most, if not a lot of their teams in those areas, but you normally have a reserve capacity as well, because you're never quite sure where they're going to end up, where they could go somewhere else. So I'd imagine they have the resources in the main areas they're expecting to encounter some issues and disorder, but they'll have a reserve capacity as well. But it does stretch resources really thin when you're talking about a whole city centre.
The Police Service of Northern Ireland launching a critical incident in response to the incident that was captured on video. And we have had a charge of attempted murder this evening. That investigation moving really quickly, Graham.
Yeah, it is. Less than 24 hours, and they've charged a suspect already. As is a practice, they don't name the suspects until they appear at court. So unlike on the mainland, where they get named at the point of charging, doesn't happen in Northern Ireland. But a charge already. That investigation, though, does continue. And you heard the Chief Constable, John Boucher, say earlier, please give the police time to deal with this. They will still be investigating it. They will still be looking at information evidence that's coming from witnesses and members of the public. They'll be trying to build up a timeline of where the suspect went. And the one question you always want to know with any incident like this is the motive. What was the motivation? The why question. Why did this take place? They know roughly how, where, when, and who's involved, but actually why it took place. What was the trigger for this, if there was one? And that's what the investigators will still be looking at. You gather evidence up until the actual trial itself. So they'll still be wanting to focus on that and reassuring the community that they are safe, but they're tonight being distracted by pockets of disorder, as we're seeing.
Detectives have said there is no indication Monday's knife attack, last night's knife attack, was terror-related. Let's bring in Sky's Conor Guinness. He is in Belfast for us tonight. Conor, things are heating up on the streets there tonight. Our colleague Dan Whitehead has had to move from his position. He's being threatened by some of the people there. First of all, hope you're OK. We'll keep an eye out over your shoulder, as I'm sure will your cameraman. But talk to me about where you are and what's unfolding behind you.
Yeah, there is simmering tension here in the city. A paradox, really. The eerily quiet motorway surrounding streets of the city centre, as many businesses and communities were warned to get home, to close their businesses early in anticipation of potential protest here in Belfast tonight following that knife attack around 10 minutes from where I am last night. And just down the street here has been the focal point of the protest so far. You can see the smoke billowing into the sky. That was a bus that was set on fire within the last hour or so. And in the last few moments, the protesters have surged backwards and have attacked a house just on a neighbouring street here. Unclear at this stage the connection, if any, to the events of the last 24 hours here in the city. But there is a simmering tension here. The media, including us here at Sky News, certainly not a welcome presence here when trying to report the events here. And an understanding as to what happened. We're talking here about politicians in this city calling the events chilling, medieval, branding it a mutilation, an attempted slaughter of a Belfast citizen. And that man is still recovering in hospital following the wounds that were inflicted on him. Questions as well around the suspect, the identity of the suspect, who remains in police custody and in the past few hours has been charged with an allegation of attempted murder. We know the journey, some of the details have emerged of that individual at the centre of this investigation, a Sudanese national, a man who apparently made the journey from Sudan to Paris, then Paris to Dublin, got a bus from Dublin to Belfast and claimed asylum in 2023 here in the UK and was granted leave to remain on a visa extending until 2028. Now, clearly that has played a part in the community's concerns here that have led to these protests this evening, a factor that they believe is something that has not been discussed here in this community enough and is a reason that they are taking to the streets. The policing presence, well, it remains significant. Streets are closed off across the city, and our security intelligence is suggesting that it's not just this particular pocket of flare-up that we have witnessed here in Northern Ireland this evening. Across many areas, they are witnessing and experiencing similar things this evening as people take to the streets. In varying numbers, hundreds of people in each of these communities to try and make their voice known. In terms of the suspect himself, well, he is due to appear at Belfast Magistrates Court in the morning, charged with, as I mentioned, attempted murder, possession of an article with a blade or point in a public place, and making threats to kill. And it has to be said, that video, that harrowing, graphic video that has been circulating and shared widely on social media of that moment, where the man is pinned to the ground, the victim is pinned to the ground, blood covering his face, and we can see that bladed weapon being inflicting wounds on his body. Now, clearly, I think our presence at the moment is feeling.
This program is delivered by DHL, the official logistics partner of VSL.
Welcome to the DHL Sports Hub on Sky News. Coming up, Harry Kane gives his verdict on England's latest friendly win as they build up to their final World Cup warm-up match ahead of next week's tournament opener with Croatia. And celebrations for Nelly Korda after she fulfills a childhood dream by winning the US Women's Open to become the first American female to claim 4 golf majors in almost 70 years. But we start with Formula One, where Kimi Antonelli says he's embracing the pressure of leading the Drivers' Championship after extending his remarkable run of Grand Prix wins in a row to 5 in Monaco and pulling further clear at the top of the standings. Well, these were the scenes after the Italian dominated in the Principality as he jumped into the harbour in Monte Carlo in celebration with Mercedes staff. There was a nervy finish for Antonelli, though, as his near 30-second lead was wiped out by 2 late safety cars when Lance Stroll and Charles Leclerc crashed. A full restart followed after track repairs, and the teenager opened another advantage of almost 7 seconds in the final 8 laps to claim victory.
I don't want to let the pressure destroy me like it did last year in the European season. So, of course, I try to embrace the pressure, the challenge. And I try to enjoy it as much as possible without worrying about anything else other than just driving. So for sure it was a good test today, because with the red flag, I'm not gonna lie, I was a bit annoyed because also getting the mindset back into redoing a full start was not easy, but it was a good test on that side, and I'm happy I didn't fail.
Well, it was the second successive race where Antonelli took maximum points and his teammate George Russell failed to score, this time after 2 time penalties left him in 12th. Lewis Hamilton's now second in the standings as a result, but some 66 points off the pace. Antonelli's also ruling the roost in the DHL Fastest Lap Award, taking that for the 4th time this season as his lead in that competition grew again too. That came as part of a golden slam of pole position, the fastest lap and victory after leading from start to finish. Antonelli was even involved as he and Mercedes registered the DHL fastest pit stop as well. His visit of 2.17 seconds was 200ths quicker than of Audi's Gabriel Bortoleto. And it was no surprise to see Antonelli also secure the public's vote as he was named Driver of the Day, presented by Salesforce. He took 22.4% of the poll, with his team principal Toto Wolff admitting the 19-year-old is reaching levels few were anticipating.
You know, he's having control. He's just at times 1.5 seconds quicker than everybody else, and then restarts and builds the gap. So it's really unbelievable.
Bono came on the radio at one point.
Just 1 second.
That's Kimi's father, Marco. Will hopefully try to get a word with him later, but obviously he's a busy man as well. Sorry.
But Bono came on the radio at one point, just as Kimi had set the fastest lap of the race, and said, "That was the fastest lap of the race, Kimi. We don't need them." Was that from you?
It was from Bono first, then it came from me. Then I said to Bono, you got to tell him that he has half a minute advantage. And then he told him half a minute advantage, but he kept putting in those times. And then we thought maybe it's his rhythm.
Former world champion Hamilton's emerged as Antonelli's closest challenger after a second consecutive second-place finish. He's now been on the podium 3 times in 2026 after failing to do it at all at any of the 24 Grand Prix last year.
I think in true performance, this is really great. You know, ultimately the 2 Mercedes should be ahead of us because they were quicker, and so to get a second, and we nearly had a third as well, would have been mega points for the team, but it was the trickiest conditions out there. So yeah, so I just want to say a big thank you to everyone back at the factory. We got to keep pushing it because it's only the beginning of the season and we're right there.
It was certainly an eventful day in Monaco as Max Verstappen stalled from second on the grid before retiring, and a number of other drivers were punished along with Russell for speeding in the pit lane. Pierre Gasly was among them, but didn't know that until his punishment was applied after he'd crossed the line in third, with Isaac Hadjar replacing his fellow Frenchman on the podium as he dropped to 7th instead.
Honestly, I'm just heartbroken. I don't have the words. I have too much emotions to process, and I just can't get my head around what happened, and it just doesn't sound fair. I mean, triple checking with the team, they set the right speed in the car. On both occasions, I've put the pit limiter way before the line, and yeah, I mean, we're all working so hard for this moment. In 10 years I do this, 10 years I try to grab every opportunities. I have 5 podiums, which is nothing in my career, and we passed the road in 3rd position in front of all the French people, and it gets taken away from us.
Already the formation lap was not going very well. And then after that the pre-start was terrible. Like there was just no consistency, and then the engine just dropped dead, and I only got a little bit of power back after the first corner, and then the engine sounded really awful. So I could not go full throttle, so we brought it back, and that was it.
Obviously, quali was really encouraging. So you go into Barcelona in just a week's time. What promises, can you make to yourself and the team about what can be achieved there?
A completely different track, so it will be a good test to see if we actually really made a proper step forward or not, because that's all about high speed and aero performance. So that will be an interesting weekend.
On to the FIFA World Cup, which is now just 2 days away. Harry Kane believes England are adapting to conditions in North America after temperatures hit 32 degrees in Tampa during their 1-0 weekend friendly win over New Zealand. Captain Kane headed in the only goal seconds before half-time as head coach Thomas Tuchel played 2 different teams either side of the break. The forward's effort was his 67th strike of a remarkable season in which he's only failed to score in 14 of the 67 games he's played. England now face Costa Rica tomorrow before next week's opener with Croatia.
You know what I'm like. I want to be on the score sheet as much as possible. Obviously knew I was only playing 45 minutes a day, so to get kind of it in stoppage time of the first half was a nicer feeling than if it went 0-0. So, but yeah, look, we're here for preparation. We're here for getting fitness, dealing with the heat, dealing with these type of pitches. So ultimately, it's another day done, and then we look forward to another friendly game in a few days.
Just as Kane's looking sharp in front of goal, so too are Scotland, who scored 4 goals for their 2nd game running as they beat Bolivia without conceding in their last warm-up fixture. They'll now begin their tournament against Haiti in Boston this weekend.
Have you got good problems now in terms of?
Fantastic problems. Really good first half, and then I turned around to my bench, and the changes I'm making are good. And when we made the changes, you lose a little bit of the rhythm of the game when you're making so many changes both sides. But the boys go in, their priority really was not to concede, because we wanted a clean sheet. It's been a little while since we had a clean sheet, so that was nice to get that.
Before we go, world number 1 Nelly Korda says her mental strength pulled her through as she made it back-to-back golf majors at the US Women's Open in Los Angeles. The 27-year-old held off England's Charlie Hull by 1 shot to become the youngest American since 1960 to reach 4 major titles. Hull, by contrast, has now been 2nd at 5 of women's golf's biggest events. Korda moves up to 4 LPGA Tour wins in 2026, with the latest arguably the sweetest.
This week was definitely a grind. I don't even feel like I had my B game. I was just grinding out there, and that's what I guess major championships are all about, right? It doesn't matter if you have your B or C game, you have to be there mentally, and I have a great support system off the golf course, on the golf course, and I literally would not be standing here without the millions of pep talks I just got on the golf course.
This